You did everything they said would fix you. The shadow work, the inner child healing, the therapy, the books, the breath work. You faced your darkness and made it through. But now, there's nothing. No fire, no hunger, no spark, just a quiet emptiness you can't explain. You thought healing would feel like freedom, but instead, it feels like you've lost yourself. Carl Jung warned us about this. He said, "The collapse of the persona is often mistaken for depression." And that's exactly what this is. You're not broken, you're not lazy. You're in the sacred pause between who you were and who you're about to become. Stay with me. In the next few minutes, we're going deep into the post-healing void and why it's not a mistake. It's the doorway to your true self. You did the work, faced the mirror, walked into the fire of your own shadow, and came out the other side. But now something's wrong. You don't feel broken, but you don't feel alive either. There's a silence in you, a stillness that feels like absence. And it's terrifying, because wasn't healing supposed to bring you peace? Wasn't this supposed to feel like freedom? Carl Jung once said something most people don't talk about. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But what happens when you finally stop living that unlived life and realize you don't even know what your own life looks like? Let me repeat that. You spent your whole life trying to survive the story someone else gave you, and now with the old story gone, there's just blank pages, no plot, no purpose, just stillness. People think shadow work gives you clarity, but what it often gives you first is emptiness, not because you're lost, but because the compass you've always followed no longer points anywhere. Your fear, gone. Your anxiety, faded. Your need to prove, quiet. And suddenly, the drive that once pushed you out of bed every morning has vanished. Not because something's wrong, but because the things that used to feel right no longer do. This is the part no one prepares you for. The sacred pause, the death of false fire. Stay with me. We're going deeper into the truth Carl Jung, Viktor Frankl, and others rarely said out loud, about what really happens after the healing, and why this feeling of emptiness may be the beginning of something real. Let me ask you something most people are too afraid to admit. What if the only reason you were ever motivated was fear? Fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of being seen as lazy, useless, or unworthy. Think about it. All those 5 a.m. wake-ups, all that hustle, all those big dreams and 10-step plans. Were they really yours? Or were they coping mechanisms in disguise? Viktor Frankl once wrote, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." But you didn't just distract yourself with pleasure. You distracted yourself with productivity, with performance, with perfection. And now that the pain has been processed, now that the wounds have scarred over, that whole internal engine, the one secretly powered by not enoughness, has stopped running. And now, you feel empty. Because that engine, as dysfunctional as it was familiar. It gave you momentum. It gave you identity. You were the achiever, the fixer, the one who always showed up. But now, show up for what? To impress who? Let me repeat what I said earlier. When you stop living a life to earn love, you often don't know how to live at all, because you've never actually done it before. Nietzsche once warned us, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what if you realize your old why was never yours? What if the why that carried you through every storm was inherited, programmed, projected? You don't need more goals. You don't need to relight the fire. You need to stand in the ashes and listen, because the old fire was a lie. And the new one, it won't start from pressure. It'll start from truth. Here's the truth that almost nobody tells you. You're not broken, you're not lazy, you're not falling behind. You are in the void. It's a place Carl Jung knew intimately, though he rarely mapped it out in concrete terms, because it can't be mapped. It's the space after the death of the false self, but before the birth of the true one. He called it the Nigredo stage, the blackening, the collapse. It's not a breakdown, it's an initiation. He said, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us. That other you, he's waking up now, but his voice is quiet. And to hear him, you have to let everything else go silent." In Alchemy, Nigredo is the first phase, where everything that once made sense dissolves into darkness, where the structures you clung to, ambition, identity, urgency, disintegrate, so the essence can finally rise. And the worst part, modern psychology, through its diagnostic frameworks, may sometimes interpret this profound stillness as a depressive state. But for those on this particular healing journey, it isn't clinical depression. It's not a lack of hope. It's a quiet disengagement from the old whys that no longer serve you. A deep stillness, not of despair, but of transition. Uninterested in playing roles, uninterested in chasing empty victories, uninterested in being a puppet for wounds that no longer pull your strings. You don't lack motivation, you've outgrown manipulation, and that includes the internal manipulation you once called self-discipline. So yes, the days feel quiet, the mornings are numb, the old fire's out. But don't rush to relight it, because the flame that's coming won't burn you, it'll awaken you. Let me be clear, this is not the end of your healing, it's the descent before the ascent, and the deeper you're willing to go into that silence, the more powerfully your true self will rise from it. You used to wake up with fire in your belly, even if it was anxiety, even if it was fear. It gave you motion, it gave you purpose. But now, the silence is deafening. You don't want to chase anything, not success, not validation, not even meaning. And that scares the hell out of you, because in this culture, drive is worshipped, stillness is pathologized, and if you're not pushing, grinding, proving, you're considered lost. But maybe you're not lost. Maybe, for the first time, you're not being pulled by a lie. Carl Jung once said, "Thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step with the false presupposition that our truths and ideals will serve us as hitherto. That old fire, it was never really yours. It was made of scraps, fears you inherited, expectations you absorbed, wounds you never asked for. You were driven by lack, the need to matter, the fear of being forgotten, the ache of never being enough. But now you've seen the truth. That fire wasn't passion, it was panic, dressed in productivity. So when people ask, why don't you care like you used to? You don't have an answer, because the words don't work anymore. The language of performance can't explain the sacred quiet of becoming. You're not uninspired, you're becoming undistracted. You're not failing, you're detaching. You're not crumbling, you're shedding. And yes, it hurts, because you miss the rush. You miss the dopamine hit of chasing something, even if it was toxic. But let me repeat what I said earlier. You're not meant to rebuild the same fire. You're here to discover a different kind of flame, one that doesn't scream to be fed, one that burns from truth, not trauma. You didn't lose your fire. You let the old one die, so a truer one could be born. You walk into the room and suddenly feel like a stranger in your own life. The job, the friends, the daily routines, they all still exist. But something inside you quietly whispers, this isn't me anymore. And it's terrifying, because no one told you that healing could make your life feel like a costume, that growth would make your own dreams feel second-hand, that the things you once loved would start feeling like echoes. Carl Jung said it perfectly: we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. Let that sink in. You can't go back, not because you're too far gone, but because you've seen too much. You've outgrown the performance. And now, everything that was built on that performance feels brittle. Dead skin you haven't fully shed. This is what Viktor Frankl meant when he said, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. But when distraction stops working, when pleasure feels hollow, when chasing validation feels absurd, you realize you're not who you used to be, but you're also not yet who you're becoming. This is the liminal space, the void between identities, the grief of who you were, and the quiet gestation of who you're meant to be. And it's brutal, because no one celebrates you here. There are no trophies for letting go, no applause for unbecoming, just silence, and the ache of no longer fitting in the life you once built. But here's the paradox. This discomfort is evidence of your evolution. It means your inner world is no longer willing to live a life that isn't aligned, even if that means sitting in the silence longer than you want, even if it means watching pieces of your old life fall away. You're not broken, you're reorienting, you're not behind, you're becoming honest, and honesty always comes before rebirth. So if nothing feels like you anymore, maybe that's not the problem, maybe that's the proof. After the collapse comes the whisper. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand. It arrives like a breath, soft, almost imperceptible, and says, "This way." But by now, you've been conditioned to expect thunder, to chase passion that burns, to follow urgency like its purpose. So when the voice is gentle, you hesitate, because you've been taught to trust noise, not nudges, and yet it's that subtle tug that begins to pull you forward, not because you're chasing something, but because you're being drawn. This is where the old motivational fuel, fear, shame, desperation, finally runs out, and something else begins to move you, something quieter, something real. As Carl Jung once wrote, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." You've been through the inferno, you've stared into the ashes, and now the voice that rises from beneath those ashes, that's not your ego, that's yourself, not the self you invented to survive, not the persona you wore to win approval, but the deeper self, the one that existed before the world told you who to be. And this self doesn't shout, it resonates. It shows up in strange curiosity, in quiet moments of peace, in that book you keep rereading, that place your body feels safe in, that path you keep circling back to, even when it doesn't make sense. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." The whisper is your new why. It doesn't offer certainty, but it does offer direction, one that isn't built on achievement or performance, but on something more sacred, alignment. You're not looking for meaning, you're recognizing it. And when you begin to follow that whisper, you stop chasing momentum and start following magnetism. You begin building a life that doesn't require hype to feel worthwhile, a life that feels like home. Let me repeat what I said earlier. You didn't lose yourself. You're just finally becoming too honest to live a lie. This is the part that breaks most people. Not the pain, not the healing, but the silence after the storm. The part where you've let go of what was false, but haven't yet found what's true, and everything in you wants to rush, wants to fill the void, wants to move, anywhere but here. But Jung warned us, all true things must change, and only that which changes remains true. To evolve, you must surrender. You must learn to be still in a world that worships motion, to not know in a culture obsessed with clarity, to wait without reaching for distractions dressed as direction. Because here's the truth most don't want to face. Healing is not a straight line. It's a spiral. And sometimes that spiral leads you to an edge with no map. Your old life doesn't fit, but your new life hasn't revealed itself yet. This is the sacred liminal space, the threshold between identities. And if you can hold your ground here, if you can resist the temptation to prematurely rebuild yourself, you'll find that something profound begins to take root. Not a new persona, not another mask, but an orientation to life you've never known before. A way of moving that's not based on control, but on listening. A way of working that's not about proving, but about expressing. A way of living that doesn't need to scream, because it already knows its place. Viktor Frankl once said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." But this time, the change isn't cosmetic, it's existential. This is where your ego dies again, not from trauma, but from truth. From realizing that being in the unknown doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're finally free from pretending you ever had it figured out. So if all you have right now is space, honor it. If all you hear right now is silence, trust it, because something is germinating beneath that stillness. And when it blooms, it won't be louder, it'll be truer. When the noise is gone, when the applause stops, when there's no one left to impress, and nowhere left to run, that's when something else awakens. Not the next goal, not the next hustle, but the part of you that was never chasing anything to begin with. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are," and most people will never claim that privilege, because it requires walking through a fire that doesn't burn skin, it burns illusion. It burns the version of you that was performing, the part that smiled when you were breaking, that strived when you were exhausted, that gave when you were empty. And what's left after the performance dies? A presence. One that doesn't seek validation, because it no longer doubts its worth. One that doesn't chase love, because it finally is love. You don't need to become someone new. You need to return to someone ancient, someone underneath the noise, someone who has been waiting for your attention your entire life. Let me repeat what I said earlier. You didn't break, you shed, you didn't collapse, you outgrew. And what felt like dying was actually beginning. The emptiness you feared so much. That wasn't the end, it was the clearing. The sacred womb where your real life could finally begin to take shape. Because when you stop living from fear, when you stop letting trauma steer the wheel, when you stop seeking purpose as a fix for pain, you start living from truth, not toward it. And that's when everything changes. You don't just heal, you become whole. You don't just stop chasing, you start listening, and you realize you never needed motivation. You needed meaning, not the kind you find in books, but the kind you remember. In silence, in stillness, in the heartbeat that says, "You're home." If this video resonated, if you've been in that space where nothing makes sense anymore, not your goals, not your career, not even your desires, then hear me when I say, you are not behind. You are not broken, and you are not alone. You're just in the space between versions of yourself. You've stopped performing, but you haven't yet begun fully expressing. That's not a failure. That's the threshold of becoming. Nietzsche once wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." So if you feel lost right now, It might mean you're closer than ever to truth, to self, to the life that's actually yours. Let me know in the comments. What part of yourself have you been afraid to meet in the silence? And if this message echoed something real inside you, subscribe, because this isn't just a channel, it's a mirror for those who are no longer willing to pretend. We're not chasing healing, we're claiming wholeness together.